Hello, Movie Mavens. Welcome back to another video on the B Movies channel. My name is Bailey, and I put the B in movies. I am also Zeke the Plumber in one of, I fear, the funniest slash dumbest slash nichest costumes I've ever done. We're not going to talk about how many times I laughed at myself before I started recording, because this is truly, like, I may just have to leave the internet, because to me, this is one of the funniest things I've ever done. Is it going to be that funny to everybody else? Probably not, but that's okay. I'm very pleased with myself on how this turned out. I hope for those that are in the know that you appreciate it. And for those who don't know, Zeke the Plumber is from a Halloween episode of Salute Your Shorts, like, over 30 years ago. Which, of course, you know, like, is something that lives in my brain rent-free. So, now with that out of the way, and yes, the mustache will stay on the entire time. My Band-Aid's trying to come off, but we're going to try to keep everything on. Let's go ahead and start out with today's Bailey Babbles. First off, we hit 50 subs. We are at 51 subscribers. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you. I can't thank you enough, Movie Mavens, just for all the support you've given me, Elliot, the blog, the channel. Just really, really appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for being here. Secondly, this is kind of a two-part announcement. So I mentioned last week that I might move videos to Sundays for, oh no, my mustache is trying to go, for October, just to give me more time to watch horror content and just be able to review everything a lot sooner for all of you. And so for the month of October, we are going to move videos to Sundays. However, just because, as y'all know, like, I've been super busy. There's been a lot going on. Good. It's all good. All good things, all good things. But I think what we're going to start doing is just saying we drop videos every weekend. And so that way, if the video's not there Saturday, you know it's going to be there Sunday. If it's not there Sunday, you know it's going to be there Saturday. Well, I mean, it would already be there, duh. But, yeah, so just that way, you know that, come on, mustache. I also, like, cannot see what I'm doing to save my life. There we go. So that way we don't promise a video and then something happens, or, like, for me personally, it just takes a little bit of the pressure off of like, that I put on myself to have it at a specific time. So we will still be doing weekly videos, but just a heads up that moving forward for our posts, if you see we drop new videos every weekend, just know the video will be there Saturday or Sunday. Just, again, this year, as we've talked about a multitude of times, I am working to give myself a lot of grace this year, and that's just one thing that, like, I've really been trying to work on. I guess my mustache is just gonna be, we may have to, okay, we're gonna have to lose the mustache. I feel like the illusion is still here, though, because I can't see to fix it, and this is where we are. So, we're gonna lose the mustache, but I feel like the effect is still here. So, just wanted to give you that heads up. So again, still doing weekly videos, but just either Saturday or Sunday. And again, just covering more content, and we don't have to do announcements. The third thing I want to babble about today is making bold moves. So, like, last week's video, we talked about, how making bold moves can really have a big payoff. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. But that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't just go for it. Obviously within reason on things. That should be common sense, but again, I'm going to say it just in case. It's not, it's good to step out of your comfort zone and put yourself out there, because at the end of the day, what happens is that you grew and you did something that you could learn from. I don't regret doing something that I did last week. I don't think my bold move paid off, and that's okay. Mustache hair in my mouth. And so I think that instead of, like, the beginning of something, I think it was more of like a, hey, there we go. It may have been like closing a chapter, but either way, I just kind of learned a lesson. And so the moral here is that it's good to try new things. It's good to put yourself out there. And again, like, within reason. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So that's just your little weekly reminder to not be afraid to be bold within reason, but just know sometimes it's going to work out, sometimes it's not, but in the end, you will be on the path you should be on, and you will take the actions that you need to. So that is going to do us for today's Bailey's Babble. So let's go ahead and dive into this week's blog roundup. If you are new here, the B Movies channel is a continuation of the B Movies blog that I run with my best friend Elliot. And you can find new pieces from us usually every Monday through Friday from at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, but for the month of October through that technically Halloween weekend, which is the weekend after Halloween, November 2nd, we will be doing 6 pieces a week. So Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. over on bmovies.blog, which is also linked in the description box below. You can find new pieces from us. So let's go ahead and jump into what is over there waiting on you for this week. On Monday, we did the 6th edition of Drawing a Blank, which is about cartoons you may have forgotten about. Elliot and I both really love this series. We hope you're loving it too. On Tuesday, we did Spotlight on James Wan, continuing our October horror directors / actor spotlights. For those who aren't familiar, James Wan, he did Saw, Malignant, Dead Silence, Conjuring, Insidious. He's worked on them. He's been an executive producer on all the Saws after the first one. And he helped write the third one. And I just really like his work. On Wednesday, we did the 3rd edition of Alluring Adaptations, where I take songs and basically turn them into horror movies. Elliot really liked the 4th one, so if you're reading it, look out for the 4th one, based on Shut Up and Dance by Walk the Moon. I don't write a lot of fiction, as y'all know, so these little series like this are just a fun way for me to kind of play in that space that I don't play in very often. On Thursday, we talked about 24 of my favorite horror movies. I thought, what better way to celebrate Halloween 2024 than by 24 of my favorite horror movies of all time. And yes, it was extremely difficult to make this list. I feel like most of it's pretty obvious, but there may be some shockers on there. You'll have to read it and find out. On Friday, we talked about Mr. Crocket, which will be our deep dive. I have to talk about this movie. I loved this movie. We will get into it here in just a second. And then on Saturday, we did the 2nd edition of Internet Oddities with Cecilia. I don't know if it's Condit or Condits. Short film, possibly in Michigan. And so that is over on the B Movies blog for you as well. So just to recap this week, Drawing a Blank, James Wan Spotlight, Alluring Adaptations, 24 of my favorite horror movies, my review on Mr. Crocket, and the next edition of Internet Oddities on bmovies.blog, which is linked below, and all 6 of these pieces will also be linked below, so you can check them out. So next up, let's dive into Bite Size Sunday. Since it is Sunday, I'm just going to go ahead and reveal the Bite Size Sunday. Again, just a perk of being on the YouTube channel. Is either A, you get a teaser, or B, you get to hear it here. So this week's Bite Size Sunday is Hold Your Breath. It's a new Sarah Paulson movie that's streaming over on Hulu. I went in with really low expectations for this one, and I was pleasantly surprised. It definitely gets a thumbs up from me, and you can check out my full Bite Size Sunday review, which again are just little tiny reviews that live over on our Instagram, just at B Movies channel, same as our YouTube handle, and go check out what I thought. But the spoiler up top is I actually really liked this one. So I would recommend giving it a shot. So now that our housekeeping is out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into today's deep dive, which is Mr. Crocket. And if you're new to the channel, this is the part of the video where we talk about one of the pieces from the week or a subject that is inspired by one of the pieces of the week. So let's talk about Mr. Crocket. And before we get started, and the trigger warnings are in the piece as well, this movie does have depictions of child abuse, drug abuse. It has extreme gore and violence, DV, and all like topics. So just a heads up, if that's not your scene, we're not going to talk about it in this video or in the piece, like really get into it. So this review is also spoiler free because Mr. Crocket just hit Hulu on Friday. So I'm not going to put any timestamps up because we're not going to dive into it. I just wanted to give that trigger warning now. So, Mr. Crocket has been on my radar for a hot minute. It closed out Fantastic Fest, which is always a good sign, and so I personally was, like, counting down the days until it hit Hulu. Like, when I found out that Hulu had acquired the rights, I was pumped. And so I watched it first thing Friday morning. Like, as soon as I was, like, seated Friday morning. And the only thing I have to say is Mr. Crocket is one of the best horror movies I've seen this year, hands down. The practical effects and the puppets are incredible. Every single person in this cast delivers a stellar performance. Every payoff is excellent. And this is just, the TLDR is that all of my horror peeps need to see this movie, especially if you love the world of analog horror. But let me back up. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So for those who don't know about Mr. Crocket, here's a quick rundown. So set in 1993, mysterious little libraries containing VHS copies of Mr. Crockett's World began popping up in front yards in a certain community. However, when the children start disappearing with only the mutilated bodies of their parents left behind, like, please enjoy, I don't like saying words like that, but it's, Mother Algorithm doesn't like it. But with the mutilated bodies of the parents left behind, it becomes clear that a friend like Mr. Crocket may be more of an enemy. So additionally, if you want to watch before the movie, Mr. Crocket is based on Brandon Espy's bite-sized Halloween horror short, which is also on YouTube, of the same name, that I believe is just a proof of concept for this film. It's a little 2-minute short. So if you want kind of a feel or an idea, watch the bite-sized Halloween horror short first. It's only 2 minutes. So Mr. Crocket, to me, it's like if you blended analog horror with Nightmare on Elm Street, threw in a pinch of Candyman and like a smidge of the Babadook for good measure. It deals with, like, these topics of child abuse and neglect. It tackles themes of grief, the stresses of adulthood. There's so much good commentary in there. Like, it really reminded me of how Jordan Peele blends social commentary with horror. It just has, like, that same bite to it. And I also love the decision to make this a mixed media film that blends, like, analog horror with animation and practical effects. Like, if you plan on making a movie that implores all of these mediums, take notes, because this is how it's done. And like I said earlier, I don't want to spoil Mr. Crocket for you, because it just dropped on Friday, and I think it's worth experiencing for yourself. But yeah, it's like Freddy Krueger if he hosted Pee-wee's Playhouse, and, like, you deserve to see this unholy alliance with your own 2 eyes. Additionally, I don't really have any criticisms for this one, so just remember this moment later on in the video when I review another movie that y'all are probably going to get mad at me for not liking. Just remember that. I have no critiques for Mr. Crocket. The only thing that I could potentially touch is /R. The context they use when Rhonda, who's played by Crystal and Lloyd, mind melds with Mr. Crocket, but again, like, that would just be nitpicky. I don't really think that criticism is deserved. I think it would just be, if you're a writer in the world of writing, we call it editing for the sake of editing. That's how I feel. It's just criticism for the sake of criticism. And I know this movie isn't analog horror, but it reaffirms what I say about YouTube being the future of horror, because there are honestly several analog horror series that I could see being successful, like, as a film adaptation, if they were executed the same way. And again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it one more time, that this movie does have scenes that do depict child abuse and drug abuse that could definitely be triggering. And, like, as someone who had an abusive father, I totally hear you and I see you. And so that's why I want to make sure that you take these CWs and TWs lightly. This movie did not trigger me personally, but again, everyone's trauma manifests differently, right? So I'm not here to tell you, like, just because I had an abusive father that I was fine. So please, like, take those content warnings and trigger warnings seriously and do some Googling or have a friend watch it for you first before you dive in. But if you're a fan of any of the horror movies that I've mentioned throughout this section, or analog horror series like Not Your Normal Kids Show, or like Mr. Samuel's Tea Time, definitely give Mr. Crocket a go. Can't recommend it enough. And so now let's go ahead and go into special features, which is the part of the video where I talk about and review things that I may not necessarily review on the B-Movies blog. It's also the time where we catch up on our favorite analog horror and horror ARGs. So I'm going to start out with this and rip the Band-Aid off. I saw Terrifier 3 last night. So before I say anything, 2 things to know. I loved Terrifier 2. It's not that I don't like this series, okay? To be very clear, I really love... Okay, my weird laptop did that weird crashing thing, so I guess it was also not prepared for me to say what I'm about to say. Okay. So again, love Terrifier 2. And second, let me give my trademark disclaimer of just because I don't like a movie doesn't make it a bad movie. Just because I think a movie's good doesn't make it a good movie. I think it's incredibly badass that an indie franchise has risen through the ranks like this. I think it's awesome that horror is becoming more mainstream, and so I want you to keep all of that in mind before I say what I'm about to say, which is I was not a huge fan of Terrifier 3. So, I was not a huge fan of Terrifier 3, to rip that off. It feels good to say it. So my first criticism is, and this is just me, again, this is all opinion-based, I think we're starting to lose the plot a little bit. And by that I mean, in Terrifier 2, we were given a lot of lore. I was following it. I really loved it. But I feel like in Terrifier 3, the info we get is a little muddled. Additionally, I think we're just trying to outdo ourselves with violence. And just, it feels a little edgelordy to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's the best way I can describe it. Is I think we're just trying to outdo ourselves. And it's like, oh, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. And like, you know, even going so far as to do a variation of an unaliving scene from Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho, like the novel that the movie's based off of. And like that book bothered me. Like that is one of the very few books that bothered me. It's on Stephen King's Night Shift is about it. And not even all of Night Shift, just The Boogeyman and Gray Matters. But there's a scene in the film. I won't spoil anything for you since it just came out. But there's a scene, and it was actually the scene that bothered me in the book, is done in the film. It's not done in the exact same way, but a very similar way. And so, again, I think the practical effects are great. I love the bar scene. I loved all the cameos. I adore Lauren Lavera. I think she is such a cool final girl. But I think that the lore is getting muddled. I think we're losing the plot. I think now we're just doing things for the sake of doing things. And I also think we need to pick a lane, because like in this one, Art has a lot of personality, but it felt super uneven for me, because there were times where he was very sassy, and we need to pick a lane. I'm sorry. And again, like I even liked the new family that got introduced, but again, I think we're starting to lose the plot, y'all. And I'll still be seated for Terrifier 4, but I'm a little nervous now, I'm not gonna lie, because I loved the second one, but y'all, I don't know about the third one. And just let me know what you think, respectfully, because again, I am being respectful. Just because I like it does not mean it's a bad movie, but, and like, obviously, I feel like I don't even need to trigger warning, content warning this, because you know, but like, these movies are messed up. So, like, just fair warning, if you are not a gore person, if you are not a blood, guts, evisceration person, do not go see these films. Do not go see these films. If you are like, I don't like all of that, don't go. Because there were times in this film that I was even sitting there just like this. And you're talking to someone who watches horror on a daily basis. So, just an FYI, in short, I was not a huge fan of it, but again, if things aren't triggering to you, I always recommend watching things for yourselves. It did not hit for me, and I'm sorry. So let's go ahead and dive into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the Scare Tactics reboot that Jordan Peele is working on. I'm digging it so far. The first episode is up over on Peacock. I love how he has little wraparounds, basically, like an intro and an outro. I love how it captures like that same spirit of the early episodes of Scare Tactics. I'm really interested to see if like it keeps up this kind of like feel and vibe. And I'll also link our reality horror piece that I wrote, just in case you need to scratch that itch of more reality horror shows like The Scariest Place on Earth, Fear, the old school Scare Tactics, things like that. So I will link that piece below. But yeah, I give it a shot. The next thing up is something I don't know how I kept forgetting to talk about this, but back in the summer, The Divine, which is a queer-owned venue in the UK, hosted a Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared themed drag show called Don't Drag Me, I'm Scared, and I fear they ate. I wish my city would do something like this. I would go in a heartbeat. I will link, they made an Instagram account for it, and there's also some photos on Reddit that I'll link below. But yeah, it's great. It's so good. And I apologize it took me this long to talk about it, but I just think it's so good. And I'll link everything below. So next up, let's talk about Daddy's Head, which just came out on Shudder on Friday. Again, like, if y'all say we were not well fed this year, let alone this month, I'm gonna thump you, because we are. Anyway, so Daddy's Head is a solid entry into what I like to call family drama horror. Like, think like Hereditary, Possum, Talk to Me, Babadook. Like that I call family drama horror. And to give you a little bit of context, after the death of her husband, Laura is faced with not only navigating her grief, but caring for her stepson, Isaac, who swears that his father has returned, but it may be an entity far more sinister than either one of them bargained for. And I was a little skeptical of this one as well. Again, with horror, I tend to be a little more skeptical on things. But once again, like with Hold Your Breath, I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, if you love movies like The Babadook, Talk to Me, Hereditary, just like that have those heavy elements of family drama, check this one out. I think it's good. I think it's worth the watch. And then finally, to wrap up our special features to today, we have what I believe is the finale of Angel Hair for now, Disc 6, Save and Continue. So this video starts with us finally seeing Cam in their Angel Hair form. They're clearly very nervous, and Gabby tells them that she and Zag just want to help them. And Zag tells them that, like, kids won't always do as they're told, and is, like, really trying to be sympathetic to the fact that Segan threw the game out. And Cam says they understand that part, but they don't understand why Segan went to Jonah. And so Jonah kind of questions why that would be odd, and Cam tells Jonah that he wasn't the nicest kid, and Gabby kind of defends Jonah and was like, well, he was going through a lot in his defense, as we've seen in the first season of Angel Hair. And so then Zag questions why Cam always played like the villain in the game, and like why he kind of pushed Segan more in a tough love way when maybe there were times that Segan just needed a friend. However, Cam challenges this too and says that they pushed Jonah in the game and like, look, it helped Jonah out. Cam continues to insist that they know what they're doing, but Gabby tells them that they can't neglect themselves in the process. So they begin arguing, and then Jonah finally tells them that fine, like, they don't have to take their advice. Like, they don't have to take the advice that Gabby, Zag, and Jonah are giving them, but they need to find a support system and take care of themselves and to stop being kind of so abrasive, and that should be their quest instead. So instead of, like, sending other kids on these quests, make their quest about themselves. You know, like, make that your quest. So then Cam steps back into the game and says that maybe they'll return one day to show that they're a good friend. And then the game slowly blacks out until there's only a square of Cam left, implying that their new quest is making themselves whole again. And then the video ends with Jonah calling Segan and the two reuniting. I love this series so much. And, like, can we talk about how cute Cam's angel hair form is? They're just so cute. Like, I can't. And like I said earlier, I think this is the end of Angel Hair, at least for now, which, judging by the message at the end of the video that says until you call again, you know, they're leaving it open-ended, but it seems like it's the finale for now. But I just want to thank the Mangan sisters and East Patch for bringing us all of the content that they do. It's great. Always enjoy it. Like I said, it's one that I stop what I'm doing to watch. So be sure to watch this series, subscribe to their channel. I'll link it below as always. But yeah, I thought we ended on a good and happy little note. So last but not least, let's go ahead and do subtitles, which are just little pieces of pop culture news that I found around the internet that I want to share with you. So first up, we have a release date for Freakier Friday. It will be hitting theaters August 8th, 2025, which happy early birthday to me. And speaking of Lindsay Lohan, happy belated birthday to Annie and Hallie from The Parent Trap. Their birthday was on October 11th, for those in the know. Martha Stewart is releasing a version of Elf on the Shelf called Martha on the Mantle that is a small Martha Stewart in mint green. So that's a thing that's happening. There you go. The new video game, A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead, has announced that it will have a microphone noise detection component, so the monsters can hear you just like in the film series, so that's not terrifying at all. And then finally, The Last Drive-In will be returning for its annual Halloween special on Friday, October 25th, which will be called Joe Bob's Beelzebub Bash. So, that ought to do us for this week. Feel free to subscribe to me on Instagram. I am at Lisa_Frankenstein_. Feel free to subscribe to Elliot, which you can find her at reading.with.red. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at bmovies channel, same as our YouTube. And be sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed. It's free. Give us a like if you feel so inclined, and leave a comment if you're feeling frisky. And if I don't leave the internet, because I think this is one of the best costumes I've ever done, I will see you next weekend. And on that note, all that's left to do is fade to black.